here on the Half Price Concessions podcast, and Lenny Batycki from Charlotte Motor Speedway and PRN's at the track joins us. Lenny, first and foremost, it's an honor to finally be on this end of our conversations, where usually you do so many interviews with your show and at the racetrack and all the things you do. So I'm honestly going to enjoy this, just to flip the script on you, because you're always asking questions. So now I'm going to be the one asking you questions.
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge to be a guest nowadays, because I'm more used to asking the questions. But I really, I sit here and feel like, we're a part of the brotherhood of being ace speedway announcers in our career, and looking forward to the chat.
So first and foremost, for people that see you at Charlotte Motor Speedway or hear you in an event, how long have you been at that establishment working in whatever capacity?
2004, Steve Post called me and said that he needed another announcer body, basically, to help him get through some of the summer shootout. And I showed up and started announcing then, and announced there through the next few years until I went out to Gateway. And then when I came back in 2010, I've been there ever since. So, a few years in the mid-2000s, and then from 2010 on as a more of a fixture, I guess, at the tracks.
One of the things also is that with working for Charlotte, you have a wide array of things that you kind of get called in to do work on. It's not just the NASCAR races, but you also have events at the dirt track, stuff at the drag strip, the auto fairs that come in. A pretty diversified group of things that you get to at least be involved in. Just purely off the fun level, what is the most fun? That's terrible grammar, I know. But what is the most fun thing that you get to be a part of, as far as kind of that wide portfolio of events you get to work and stuff?
Well, there's no bigger theater than a NASCAR weekend, because there's so much going on. There's no more fun race than the World Finals. There's no more physically fun thing than an NHRA top fuel pairing, where they thunder down, and it's not just a pair when you've got a quad in the four wide. But really, I love going around Auto Fair and looking at the rusty signs and the kooky things that we see out in the swap meet area, or when we've got drift cars in there. The Auto Fair is really just this collection of people having a great time together, and I love that vibe of the car lovers, the swap meters, the old Coca-Cola signs, and that's a real transition from the wide open dirt late models of the World Finals and all that stuff. So I get fun from every event that I get to be at, but there's just that maybe off throttle fun of Auto Fair that is really interesting.
Well, that, and you also get to have more conversations. You're a good conversation guy. I know whether the mic's on or off, you could conversate for days. So I'm sure that event lends itself a little bit to more of that, whereas the races and stuff, it's loud, there's something going on, and things are happening quicker, where Auto Fair, you're there all day.
Oh yeah, you're there all day, and you can just roll up on somebody and they want to talk about their car, or they want to talk about this thing that they've brought out that has a looks like a chicken, and it's supposed to be in your front yard, and it's got some kind of wagon wheel spinning on it when some off the wall whirligig or something. But if you're interested in something at that event, you're right, it's quiet, so you go, hey man, what's that thing do?
And they're happy to tell you.
Yeah, so it really gives you the chance to do that. And as you're going through some of the vintage stuff, you'll find some old racing things out there, and you could say, man, look at that old Cale Yarborough thing, and the person will tell you where they got it or where they saw Cale or whatever. And those are great sharing moments. You don't have to know each other. You don't ever have to cross paths again, but it shares that love of the automobile and the feeling and the vibe of what we all love to be at races with.
So that's cool stuff, man. I always thought like Auto Fair might be a little bit of a bore, just because you're there all day and God forbid it rains, but so that's why I asked. That's why I'm glad I asked the question, because I would have not thought
it's
that.
It's like when it rains at a race. You're squawking that it's wet. It might be cold, and you know. But if somebody said, "Well, then why don't you go home?" You go, "No, man, this is where I want to be."
Yeah.
And with auto fair, when it rains, it's tougher to get around and find people, sure. But when it doesn't, and you can go out there, why not talk to somebody about what the shared interest is of looking at something? And I like to find old bike parts and things like that. So you get to talking to somebody about it. And, well, I don't have one of these, but three rows over is Billy. And, he comes up from Georgia and he might have it. And you go over there and he's got an old cardboard box. And you start looking through it. And those are the fun things of sharing this. You feel like you knew each other, even though you've never seen that fella or lady before. But you know that you thought in the same way, the heart beat in the same way for what this was all about being around these race cars and these cars in general.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, because I think I met you 2010, 2011 at a Speedway, and you were promoting your radio show PRNs at the track, and you were announcing at Charlotte. But where are you from? I don't think I've ever asked you where you're from.
I was born in the same hospital as Davey Allison in Hollywood, Florida. And grew up down there, and my racing career started out when I was 12, but I was a bike racer. Now, I had been to drag races in my pre-teens and such, and saw the Coca-Cola 64 funny cars and the Vanishing Point funny car that was a 3-second hydrogen bomb, basically, that was incredible. But that was just the boy fan in me, and had the Matchbox cars of the Snake and Mongoose and such, and built the model cars. But I raced bikes and became a nationally ranked rider and such. But I had gotten hurt off the track, not related to bikes, and slowed up dramatically. So I wouldn't make it into the B mains and the features for the car race folks. And I'd be sitting there, and I got bored listening to the fathers that would announce. And I had always had a passion about wrestling announcers. Gordon Soley was the hero to me, and I would imitate Gordon. And then I got to, say, hey, why don't you let me try the PA? Because you've been up here so and so, Mr. Smith, announcing, and you're tired and you don't want to do these mains. Let me, and that's how I kind of got to start announcing, and got to do that at a very high level. In the mid-'80s, in the BMX world, the magazines ranked me as the world's best announcer. So I got to be on a lot of different opportunities all across the country. I announced in Hawaii, announced their Grand Nationals. They would fly me into all kinds of places. And your event in the mid-'80s, if you had a BMX event, my voice made it big. And that's not me saying that. That's what they said. Yeah, okay. Nobody cared about BMX, so I thought I was the king of the world. And, we were just out there having fun. I was just outside of my teens and living, the free life of thinking I was much bigger than I was. So, 1986. A guy walks up to me.
2 years before I'm born.
Yeah.
Not to make you feel old or anything.
No. So this guy walks up to me at a bike race in Atlanta at Peachtree and says, "You're really good. You ought to do cars, though." I said, I'm not really interested in cars. I was a fan of drag racing, but no. He goes, "No, man, you should do cars." And I'm like, Richard Petty and the Goodies headache powder thing. Is that what you mean, sir? And he goes, "Yeah, you probably need to learn a little bit, but you'd make more money than bikes." I said, "Oh, okay."
Oh, there's money to be made here.
Yeah. So,
were you getting paid were you getting like $20, $25 a race, or were you just going for free and just enjoying what you're doing?
Bike racing, they paid all my expenses. They paid me hundreds of dollars. I was at a very nice level.
Was this just the track PA, or did you have
track PA.
Radio? Okay, no radio yet.
No radio. We did a couple of how-to videos. I got to do a how-to race BMX in Beverly Hills, California. So on a sound stage, and I remember sitting there and the makeup artists and everything like that, and I wanted a cup of water, which was like just past arm's length. And I started to go for it, and they said, "No, sir, you can't move." From the back of the room, they called up some guy, poor guy, to hand me the water. I'm like, dude, I don't need that.
Yeah.
You know, I could get my own drink. Like, no, sir, we want you to stay in character, stay there. If you need something, you tell us what you want.
Wow.
Just blown away.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I hope nobody ever sees that that video, because the sweater they made us wear and all the silly lines that they had us do, they way overproduced it. But you get to learn a lot and get to see a side that I have never experienced since. But we did some TV production things for Nickelodeon and ESPN. So we were being seen all over the world, and got to work with Olympic gymnast Bart Connor. He actually was the voice of one of these, and I went in the directing booth, and I was the guy telling him what to say. Wow. So he would sound like sort of an expert, and be good on the show, that whatever we were on that day. But to go back to '86, the guy says, give it a try, and slowly he kept nudging me towards opportunities, and got to go to Talladega when Bobby Allison went in the fence and Davey won, and I got to meet some people there that he was trying to get me introduced to, and it didn't work out that I could really get an opportunity then, and certainly they weren't really in the talking mood because of what went on, but it started to interest me more and more. And I went back home to Florida, and in the newspaper, the drag strip there in Florida was advertising for a assistant announcer or a second announcer.
That's right there.
Yeah.
Wasn't far from the house at all.
No. And so I run out there and I say, well, I don't know anything about cars, but you got motorcycle class out there. So I stayed there all night, and finally they let me announce the motorcycle portion of it. And, I kind of made it through that. And the guy says, well, why don't you come back and, we'll teach you how to do real announcing for drag racing. And I spent a number of years as a drag race announcer and got to be pretty good.
That's a lot of fill time, because it's not a NASCAR race where it's 500, 600 miles and pit stops. It's 5 seconds a hit, and then 5 minutes to talk about it or set up the next one. Or you got to learn how to fill in a hurry.
Got to learn to fill in a hurry, and early on I had to learn how to see what a Ford or a Chevy was, because they would have to tell me that's a Ford, that's a Chevy. I didn't know the back end of a Mustang from the back end of a Camaro. Now I could tell you, the lights and things like that. But I remember just the deer in the headlights. Didn't understand the magnitude of it, because I hadn't grown up as a car guy. I could tell you down to the minute bolt and nut of a bike. Then I started to realize that cars and bikes were really just vehicles, and it was really the people. And that, to me, is where I still am today. Whether I was announcing about bikes, drag cars, dirt cars, stock cars, to me, the most interesting thing about all of this is the people I've gotten to meet. The different backgrounds, the different talking styles, the different passions within the passion of motorsports. And it all translated to that 12-year-old kid that wanted to win the bike race that I was at that day as a 12-year-old. And it's still the same feeling I get at the World Finals, at the Coca-Cola 600, at any of the events I'm at. I can see that same fire. They're just using a different apparatus.
Vehicle, yeah.
So that's what has been the constant in my many years of racing, is that it's the people, and that's what I love the most.
So many people I talk to in racing, I'm always fascinated to hear what was, or who was, more importantly, the person that kind of led them down there. And for everybody, it's someone different. Like for me, I had it on both sides of my family, where my uncle on my dad's side was working for a cup team, but it was my grandpa on my mom's side that took me to races every Friday and most Saturdays. So for you, even in BMXing, was it a family member or was it like a friend that was doing it that kind of got you? Who kind of got you to the track of any kind in the first place?
In the first place, it was my parents. Most 12-year-olds can't get there by themselves. And it was my friends that introduced me to, jumping with a wooden ramp on a cinder block and such. And then some kid came by and he could do way better stunts than we could. And we found out that he raced this BMX thing. And then that was what propelled me to cry to my folks to get me to a racetrack, and they took me. And
were there a lot kind of around your house, or did you kind of have to travel?
No, there were 3 or 4 within 30 miles of my house. Okay. And this would have been summer of '76. I started long before you were born.
I was a twinkle in somebody's eye.
Winning maybe the second race I was in really was damn cool. And to work harder at it and train hard and everything else. I loved, the competition side of it. And I feel that when I'm talking to a racer, you could just sense that they love that hard work, that they don't mind being out in the garage at 2 a.m, just like I didn't mind doing wind sprints uphill. That was how we trained it. In Florida, it's flat. So the hill is usually an overpass that you could use to gain strength of riding.
Yeah, that wasn't dangerous at all.
No. And it wasn't terrible when the cars with back in the 70s exhaust drove by and you were choking. But that passion is the translation over to cars. It made it so much easier than when I stopped trying to overthink, is this a 67 Camaro or is it a 68 or a 69? That's just a person that loves doing this like I loved doing bikes. And when I could find that level, that's what really, got me more excited about being in cars, because now I had a whole bunch of people that were there. They were adults and people with careers and jobs, and this could be really something. So I still see it, I still feel it with the people that we get to interview now.
So I'm purely curious on the BMX stuff. Obviously, it's a lot different than going to a speedway and watching a 30-lap modified race. It's from if I'm wrong, correct me. You start at the top of a hill. They let the gate down. There's jumps. There's different things that kind of test your ability, and you get to a finish line that is not the same as the start finish line. So, with doing BMX racing, with the race being shorter, I guess you say, does that mean you had to do like 10, 12, 15 classes of riders when you would like go to these events?
Yes.
Or was it okay?
There would be approximately 8 people in a moto, kind of like a motocross race, really like a motocross race, where you had the peewees, you had the 10-year-olds, you had the 12-year-olds. Classes would be split by novice, junior, and expert, and then you had a pro class and things like that. So in the mid '80s, there was at least maybe 1,000 to 1,200 riders from across the country that would go to these national events. And I didn't need sheets. I didn't need to know. I knew them all. I could tell you where they were from, who they were with. I knew things back to their, girlfriends and where they wrecked the last, time. It was just what I loved to do, was to know that person. And that's what I try to do with car racing. I see a lot of young announcers that do a lot of notes and things like that before a race. To me, it's the vibe of a race. It's the passion. If you go and you talk to people early in the day at any race, whether it's a bike race, motorcycle race, car race, there's a vibe that you'll start to pick up on, and what they are interested in hearing come out of the PA. And if you hit that vibe just right, that crowd and you are in sync, and you're really just translating their energy into words.
Yeah. It kind of sounds like, if I'm just hearing it correctly, don't go in there with a script.
No.
Just go in there and call what you see. Don't go in there with a script. Know what you're talking about, but don't go in there with a script and force your script on it no matter what's happening. Call it as you see it.
Yeah.
Because that's all they're seeing in the stands.
Right. It's a visual thing. You can make the visual be a little bit better than the reality is, but
yeah, if it's a 5-car, U-car race and everybody's spaced out and one car's lapped everybody twice,
right,
that's tough.
But you might know if you took time early in the day to go walk around that U-car pit, and you might have found somebody that had just had something great happen to them, maybe had a crew member that's sick or back at home in ill health, and you could just offer, hey, he's in fourth right now. You might have thought he would have done a little better. His crew member Ralph is back home sick, and we want to offer our condolence, not our condolences, he's just sick, but something to say, hopefully he'll get better, and maybe next week we'll pick it up, and that can be something that you say while they're all strung out, but it's still important, and the crowd will either know that or will some in there will really be honored that you took the time to say something about poor Ralph who's in sickness.
Yeah. So you're doing all this BMX racing, announcing, I should say. Mm-hmm. You're building up your resume. More importantly, you're developing your style, and you're doing this, and you kind of get exposed into the car stuff. Nowadays, at a lot of these colleges, I know like Belmont Abbey has it and some other places, there are things in college that you go to for people that want to work in motorsports in some capacity for a living. When you came up, was there anything like that where you went to school after high school, or was this all just going to have to come from your passion to work in any kind of racing, whether it was two-wheel or four-wheel?
Yeah, there wasn't any school stuff. When I was in high school, we had a work program where you could go, and if you could get somebody to sign out for you, you could go to your work an hour and a half or so earlier than the rest of the school let out. Well, to me, my work at that point in high school was training and making my body stronger to compete. And I was a factory rider. I was getting paid to race, and that was my job. So I got to leave school and then go ride and do things that made me a better racer on the track. And I'd come back and I'd go, hey, look, this month's magazine, I'm on in page 3. Here's a picture of me winning a race or whatever. And so that was my kind of currency to get out. I went on tours and stuff in the, I guess, while I was in high school, and then just as I got out, started taking some college courses at the community college. And then in '83, my father died. Oh. And that was just a dramatic, life-changing moment, like it is for anybody else. But I went from being a competitor to really analyzing what I was doing. I started going to college. I got a 2-year degree. In that time, I shifted over more from being a rider into a promotion type role where we were teaching BMX around the country. I would coordinate a tour of racetracks in the summer, and we'd go for 30, 40 days, town to town, teaching kids how to perform better. And you can see some of that on the internet. There's people that still talk about it. And then I would announce on the weekends, because I couldn't train at a high enough level, go to community college and try to work. I worked at a bank, filling in forms and stuff to make it through. But along the way, that racing announcing side started to showcase who I was and who I could be. And I started getting industry opportunities within bike racing to be a marketing director, a team manager, things like that. And that started to open up my eyes to how we produce marketing for racing. You still have teams, you have drivers, riders, you have logos, you have colors, you have uniforms, all of the same thing within car racing. And I started to get a lot of good mentoring from experts that were there before me. And that's been my education, has been mentor based. Great people that let me make a lot of really dumb mistakes and then said, well, now pick yourself up, don't do that again, and here's the right way to do it. And that's how I learned most of everything I know.
Gotcha. So at what point does working in motorsports become like your full-time job, or in any kind of, I guess, capacity? Because you're doing all this stuff, but then, like you said, you still had to work at the bank, the 9 to 5. Or so. At what point do you get to that level?
In the later part of the 80s, I got to be an intern for the 89 Mellow Yellow 500 up here at Charlotte.
The fall race.
Fall race. I had already done an audition with Mark Garrow for Capital Sports Network, so they kind of knew that I wanted to be an announcer. But in '88, my mother died, so that put a little bit of a slowdown in '88. But by then, I had to keep moving. I had a career that I was trying to carve out, or wishing I could carve out. So in '89, I went to the race and ran drinks up and down pit road, and had to run to the media center to get sheets every few laps to give the pit reporters so that they would have updates, because there was no social media, there was no electronic updates. And I did that, and one of the guys on pit road was Mark Garrow, and the other was Pat Patterson.
Yeah, both still on PRN?
Both still on PRN. Well, I get that done, and I go back to Florida, and it must have been, January, because the race was October, and I'm still crying to people to try to let them, let me come up and let me do something. And I call Pat Patterson's office, and the lady says, well, let me see if Mr. Patterson's in. And she asks Pat, hey, somebody named Lenny Batycki is wanting to speak with you. Now, as the story goes, Bill Hennessy, who was at Myrtle Beach Speedway, and at the time, and still is, one of Pat's best friends, is in that office. Bill had been the producer of the race that I interned at Charlotte. The phone rings, and the lady says somebody named Lenny Batycki is on it, and Pat's like, I don't know, who's this Lenny Batycki guy? Hennessy says, hey, Pat, that's the boy that ran all that stuff to you and worked his ass off at Charlotte. Pick it up. See what he wants. He did good for us there.
That's a good Hennessy impersonation, I will say.
You got a little chicken bog. You come down to Old Reed County. You get some calabash. I've worked with Bill enough. One of those great mentors that let me mess up a lot, and told me how to fix it. And sure enough, learned from one of the really great visionaries. Bill sees a whole different side of racing, and to listen to what he does, what he sees, and then be able to blend it in was something I really enjoyed. But anyway, so Hennessy says, talk to him. So Patterson says, look, I'm going to Daytona in a couple of weeks. We got shows in the morning, shows at night. I need somebody to stand out there and get the crowd pumped up before I come on stage. You want to be a part of it? Come up. We'll have you a place to stay. Okay, so now I got another weeks of interning for somebody that I'm not making any money for and not doing it. But I get to go to Daytona and work with Pat Patterson. So we get there, and I'm shown where I get to stay, which is this space in the doorway of the bedroom.
I like that you call it a space. It's not a room, it's a space.
It's the space. So right where the door opens and closes to the bedroom where Pat gets to sleep, I get that area. Now, it's ground. So I had to run to Kmart, buy a lounge chair cushion to be able to have something that wouldn't kill my back, and a blanket. And I slept in a doorway with him stepping over me to get in and out
of the bathroom or whatever.
Yeah, he could go to the bathroom without stepping over me because he had one kind of off the other way. But if he wanted to go to the kitchen, I had to watch out. I wasn't getting a foot in the head. And during the day, I would collect notes at Daytona on who was fastest and such. And then I would go and I would put on my high school blue blazer, a tie, and long pants and go to this nightclub, the Daytona Inn on Broadway. And I would get there about 6 o'clock and I would set up stuff and be ready and talk to the audience and say, look, Mr. Patterson's going to be here, and he's going to have Bobby Allison, Neil Bonnet, and this young kid named Ernie Irvin coming up tonight. You're going to have to help me out, though, because I'm new to this. I need you to clap and applaud when Pat comes in and when we come in and out of breaks, because around the world, they're going to hear you clapping. So I would stand up, and at first, it's like any little geeky kid in a jacket in a basically almost a Daytona biker bar. Hey, kid, sit down. And I would have to just drive through that and talk about Neil Bonnet or Bobby or whoever, Richard, was on the track. And, here's Pat. And then I would cue Pat in and out of commercials and cue the crowd to clap. And I got to do that. And I did it for 6 nights or 5 nights there at Daytona. And that worked out really good. They liked me. By the end, I got to actually speak on one of the morning shows with Hill Overton and Pat Patterson, and it was just a great experience. But again, it didn't lead to anything at the moment. Yeah. So Daytona of 90, I go back home and I'm like, well, I've done everything. I've been to Charlotte. I went to Garrow and did something at Orange County. I don't know what I'm going to do. March. Phone rings. It's Patterson. 8 o'clock night. Why is Patterson calling me at 8 o'clock at night?
Yeah. Had to beg to get him on the phone in the first place.
Exactly. Now he's calling me. And he says, so you still want to go to North Carolina and live and work in racing? Yes, sir. Well, you're going to go in 2 weeks to this NHRA race at Rockingham, and you're going to say yes, sir, no, sir, and you're going to be the politest guy there is, and you're going to get this job. You're going to be the assistant PR and marketing guy at the track in Rockingham, and you're going to do it as best you can, and you're just going to make sure you're good.
Okay.
Okay.
Had you ever heard of Rockingham before this?
I don't know that I had. Maybe by then I had. So I drive up there, and I get the interview, and it's with Frank Wilson out at a chalet eating barbecue, as we had talked about off air before. And he likes me. That's day one. He says, stay over. We want you to meet Mr. DeWitt, LG DeWitt, who owned the track the next day. Frank's the president of the track. LG's the owner. So I'm in there with LG and Frank. And yes, sir, no, sir, all those kind of things. And Mr. DeWitt kind of leans back. And he was within a few months of dying. So he was pretty frail at the time. And leans back and says, Frank, you like this boy? Yes, yeah, he'll be all right. And, well, you going to be a good boy? Yes, sir. You going to not carouse around? You don't want to go to Charlotte, do you, and get in them big city things? No, sir. No, sir. I'm committed to be here. I want to be here. You go to church, son? Yes, sir. And your wife, you and her okay? Yes, sir. So then he says, well, come on up here. And this will be something that the folks listening will think it's really unique, because I still do. So Mr. DeWitt calls me up to his desk, and there's a blank piece of paper. The entire paper is blank.
Like rule sheet, like the lines on and everything.
Yeah, exactly. He says, sign your name here. So I signed my name. I don't know. I was nervous. I signed my name. Yeah. He looks at it, looks over at Mr. Wilson, and he goes, you're sure? Yep. All right. I'm good.
That was your contract.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know whether
it was that I could write cursive. I don't know.
It could have been.
It could have been.
Because I asked you every other question.
Yeah, I never got a chance to ask him before he passed why he made me do that. And, so I got a job at Rockingham off of a phone call and write my name on a piece of paper. Yeah. Wow. It was the greatest. Rockingham to this day is the teachings I learned there were my real college. They were everything that anybody sees about how I act, the respect I give people, are from Frank Wilson and a Marine who was our refreshment and operations manager, Wayne Loudermilk. Daddy Wayne was the guy that was basically a father figure to me and made sure that I did the right thing and taught me how to be Southern in a proper way and how to respect no matter what the person did, why. Taught me about, the big picture, right and wrong. Frank taught me about the business. I got to meet Bill France Jr., got to know about the sport from its historical sides and such, and how the business of the sport works, because we had just brought TNN into the business. So
at the drag strip?
No,
or at the circle track.
At
right
circle
next door?
track.
Okay.
Frank was the guy that broke the hold that NASCAR had. He was the guy that went outside the box, and he brought Dover with him and Pocono with him, and but Frank was the guy. And so I got to learn about that and be around the Nashville Network people, Steve Evans, and then Neil when he was a commentator, and all of those guys. It was just an explosion of opportunities to learn from the masters of the sport and to do it in a rural place that was forgiving of my, rough edges and of things that I didn't know. They wanted me to succeed because I had, I guess, earned enough of their trust to see that I wanted this like they wanted it to be. I just needed them to teach me. And 6 great years there of being at Rockingham. And then I got the chance to go to a Childress.
That's one thing I've always been curious about, because and this probably sounds bad on my part, I see so much in that announcer light. When I see that the part about being at Richard Childress Racing on your resume, it throws me a little curveball, because I'm like, wait a minute, all he does is announce, and I don't mean anything bad about that. But that's okay. That's all I know you as. So, how does that opportunity even come about?
Well, there was another opportunity happening at the same time.
This is at 95, 96.
95. So this is 95. And Frank Wilson had passed away the year before, or the year before that even. And, I was vice president of marketing. We had growth every year. This was the roaring 90s, and it was roaring. We had fantastic events, a lot of success. But that was about where I was going to be if I wanted to be there. And I didn't feel like I was fulfilled. Okay. So at the same time, Goodwrench was our race sponsor and AC Delco, and they knew that Richard Childress was looking for growth in his business to help Dale continue to, go after the 8th championship. Well, at the same time, to tell you about announcing side, Patty Wheeler and TNN let me have an audition and liked it. On the TNN side, I was paired at Hickory for a race with Mike Hogwood, and I were in the booth.
Oh, I grew up with Mike Hogwood on Channel 2.
So
wow.
Hogwood and I did the play-by-play, and I think we both kind of did play-by-play at the same time. It was an open booth where you just talked and freely about what was going on. And we had this guy running around in the pits that, turned out to be pretty good. His name was Steve Burns.
Yeah. I'd say he turned. See, that was at a time when TNN was doing everything.
Exactly.
World of Outlaws, drag racing, NASCAR, anything that had wheels on it, they're racing. They went all in. It seemed like
we were going to be the floating crew when people were at 2 races on the same weekend, or they were trying to broadcast multiple races. We were going to be that last crew that would go in and take the lowest of the totem pole, and do it, which was fine with me. I was just tickled with the opportunity, but they didn't have it written to where that was going to be for sure. That was a plan.
It was kind of up in the air.
It was up in the air. This was September, October of 95. Well, Childress is talking to me by then, and he was starting to, get more and more serious. By the time we went to the Waldorf, is where we cut the deal that I would come to Childress. It was clear that TNN wasn't going to be locking us announcers in until at least over the year. Well, at that Waldorf thing, we were up there for the banquet, and at the Waldorf, Brian France would always talk about what the state of the racing was.
Is that the banquet where Jeff Gordon tipped the cup of milk to Dale Earnhardt because it was 95?
It would have had to have been, yeah.
Yeah, because Earnhardt gave him so much grief about being a kid. Probably the best banquet pun or banquet joke I've ever seen.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about the banquet in a minute. So we're there, and Brian France announces that NASCAR's going to Japan.
Oh, yeah, the exhibitions.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go to Japan. I really wanted to go to Japan. So later that day, I meet with Childress to talk about going to work for him. And he's like, you're going to be, our vice president. We've got a vice president. We need you to grow, our marketing side and things that, we want to grow. So we need another one of what we've got. And, I'm like, well, I'll do it. My only thing is I got to go to Japan. I want to be on that gig. Well,
that was the road course, right? That wasn't. They didn't do the circle track to this was
right. This was
Suzuka.
This was Suzuka.
Yeah.
And then we did 2 years at Suzuka and then Motegi, and I went to all three. But they were Childress, I think, was laughing inside because he didn't want to go there in the first place, and to have somebody want that as part of their deal. But
I heard Mark Martin talk about he didn't a lot of guys. It seemed like they were very resistant to it, and you're gun ho. You're like, man, I'll be on the first plane.
Oh yeah, Can I go there and wait on you guys?
Yeah.
I really wanted to, see the world as big as I could. And so, Childress laughingly agreed, and the rest of the deal was really nothing. It was easy to go to work there, as far as the deal. And then I started January 2nd of 96 as the VP at RCR, and didn't know anything about a race team, but I did know how to sell. And we were able to innovate some things there within sponsorship. That first Daytona, I was there, and I'm looking around, and I'm still learning. But we had one sponsor on one end of the pit area, and another sponsor on the other end of the pit area, and they weren't talking. And I knew enough about marketing from being the VP of marketing at Rockingham for 6 years and bike race marketer. And I'm thinking, these guys could be helping each other with just getting rental cars together instead of paying all their, this money.
Were they in competing industries?
No. These were.
So they have no reason to not be.
No, So by May, I started what is now taken for granted as an industry standard. We did sponsor summits, and people thought we were crazy. But we went to Richard's condo at Charlotte Motor Speedway and had the quarterly sponsor summit. Actually, it was the third of the year, so there were three of them. One in the May race, one in the middle of summer, and then one towards October race there. We would bring in all the sponsors, and we would talk about their marketing plans and how we could integrate each other's marketing plans. And it was like rocket science. To me, it was just getting people that had a common goal together to work out common ways of helping each other succeed. And that's what we spurred on there at at Childress. The Akuma deal, the Bass Pro deal, many of the deals that are still on these cars. I was the guy that sold them in first.
Was that a time when Dale was the only Cup car, or was he running two cars?
No, we had built the 31 by then.
And you had the truck team too.
And we had the truck team. So we get the 31 going by Talladega, and we got Realtree on it, and I'm learning about paint colors and things like that. Towards the end of 96, we get Jay Sauter coming in. Jay is going to be in our truck because Mike is now going to be in the 31 full time because we've got the Lowe's deal coming, and we were ground floor on that. So we go to Vegas, and this is something you and I had been talking about earlier about catch can and things like that. So we go to Vegas and we got the bright idea that we're going to run 2 trucks. We're going to run Skinner here in the last race, and we're going to run this Sauter kid so he can get some laps and we can learn about him too. Well, we get out there and we realize while the trucks are just getting under caution that we don't have a full pit crew for the second truck.
Yeah, this is not like today's times where there's like a bevy of pit road or pit crew people.
Right.
You got to pull people out of the shop, I guess, or the employment. I guess.
Yeah. So they had the core truck guys there, and Sauter and Skinner were running pretty well. So they didn't have all the bodies there. I'm out there in Dockers and a business shirt because I'm the VP and I'm, trying to romance sponsors and things like that. Childress walks up to me with the catch can for the second truck and says, "You're going over the wall." Now this is, I'm in polyester and I'm going to be around the potential for fire.
Fuel. Yeah, you're going to burn up in a hurry.
Yeah, I'm done. And I don't know, we didn't qualify that well, so we're in the back of the pack. Whoever was behind our truck is going to kill me while I'm on fire. That's what I'm thinking.
Did you even put a helmet on?
No, nobody had helmets.
Oh, yeah, you were just wearing a ball cap.
Yeah.
If that.
Yeah. I did win best dressed on pit road that day, I'll tell you that, because nobody went over the wall looking as good as I did.
How nervous were you?
I didn't know whether I was to look at the catch can once I got it in, if flames were going to come out, or, as I did, more watch the guy coming at me that was pitted behind us, because I figured the truck would pull the catch can out of my hand or out of its connector, but the guy behind me I had to watch out for more.
Yeah.
And but it was a lot of fun. I think we did 2 stops. We may have only done 1, but it was wild to have him walk up and go, "You're going over the wall with a catch can."
You're like, "Man, I'm established. I'm a VP. I got business cards. Sure, let me go stand out there with my back to a race car on pit road and gas.
Gas and Dockers." So, that was a good time. But it also helped me be comfortable going to Japan. I was cleaning the windshields, and at Suzuka, it was Watkins Glen style. So I had to go to the outside of the car. And
you had to run all the way across.
Yes, you had to run all the way across.
No squeegee brush.
No. This is towel and a little bit of something to spray on the windshield. I don't know whether it's SD20 or something. But I had to go to the outside of the car there. And the race we won, the second year, we had to beat the best pit crew of the year out to get it, and that was Mark Martin's crew from Roush. We came in, and the jackman was a great friend of mine, and Ron Otto was on the front. So Mike Sears, the jackman, tells me, says, "Look, you better get that window clean, because when I get ready to drop this jack, I'm coming. And I'm going to come through you and go leave you here dead on pit road if you don't finish." So I remember cleaning the windshield as fast as I could, which time slows down when you're on that side of the car. Yeah. I got it all clean and took an extra swipe, and then I felt Mike starting to put the car down, and I remember following Ron out, and the 3 of us were like nose to tail, Talladega style, where boom, and at Suzuka, I broke off and walked right into the garage area because there was no wall.
Yeah.
And Ron changed and Mike jacked the car. But I remember how excited that was to beat Mark Martin out and to still, get it and to win. That was really fun to be a part of that pit crew and such. So we had some great times.
You got to tell me the banquet story.
Okay, so the banquet story.
Went off on Japan.
Went off on Japan. So the banquet story, guys go to the bathroom, and you don't try to look when you're going to the bathroom and stuff. But the bathrooms at the Waldorf, there weren't too many stalls. There were like 3 urinals in there.
It's not a trough like there is at our local dirt tracks.
So it's all marble, and they got the nice marble things in between them. But there's only 3, and during the banquet, like any time there's a break, they get full, and so you have to wait in line. Well, I'm waiting in line at the 95 banquet with Alan Kowicki in front of me, Rusty Wallace and Dale Earnhardt behind me. And the 4 of us are going to walk in.
Wait, that had to be pre-95 then.
Okay, well, whatever year that was. The Waldorf, that's my Waldorf bathroom story, is a better way to put it. So, because Alan died earlier. But I remember going there, and I'm like, why am I between these three, and I'm going to have to go do my business with these guys?
Well, no one's going to ask for your autograph.
No, nobody's going to ask. Nobody's wanting me to shake hands while we're doing it there. But that was just fun times to be, a little guy, growing up in this wild world.
That's crazy. So, how long did you stay at Childress? How long?
7 years.
Wow.
7 years.
Did you think you would stay that long?
I actually thought, at certain points that this was going to be it, because it was a thrill to help those guys, and we were achieving success that they weren't expecting. Being able to rescue Akuma was out of the business, but we found a way to enhance the sponsorship in a totally different way that provided them the opportunity to come back in. Bass Pro had been just resistant to coming in the sport, but we had things that mattered to them that helped build the trust, and they came in with it. And other sponsors. I remember getting Hewlett-Packard computers to give us 3 laptops or 2 laptops. I thought I'd hung the moon. Man, we got 2 laptops from a computer company for a race team. Woohoo! But, now it's just nothing.
Yeah, there's 8 on top of the pit box.
Yeah, on top of the pit box. Well, to be able to get a computer back then. But those were some fun stuff. Winning Daytona as the VP of the team and such, and watching all that success, having the success at times of the 31 car, and seeing the ups and downs, and working with Larry McReynolds and David Smith and Will and so many of the others that were there. There was a lot of good. And then, of course, 2001 came, and all of our world crashed down. Everything changed, and it just really brought me back to, this is not what you're built to be a part of, as much as the other side of the sport. And I did a little bit of team stuff after RCR, thinking that maybe that was going to be something, but it was really more the marketing and the sales and the promotion that I loved, and announcing gave me the platform to do that. So 7 years, 6 really, really good until the crash. And then that last year, I don't know that anybody on the property felt like it was a year that we ever want to even think about. Yeah. And then when I left RCR, my wife said, let's take a break and you not think about motorsports for a few months and get this kind of your feeling back, your love for whatever you want to do next. And during that time, Ogilvy PR Worldwide started calling me, wanting some recommendations and seeing through the sport, and I became a consultant for them. And I got to go to China for a week.
Really?
I went to China and taught motorsports for the Shanghai Circuit's F1 race before they raced. About 6 months beforehand, I was flown there. Ogilvy's client was the Chinese government, and they needed their motorsports guru, who I had become at the time, to go there and teach motorsports to their clients, so their clients could effectively leverage their relationship within what they were doing there in Shanghai. So 8 days of translators and being on that plane was really neat, and an honor to go over there and help out the people that were involved with the track and the sponsors that were involved.
How long was that plane ride? That had to be like 12 hours.
Yeah, it's a 12-hour ride, but it's just like going to Japan. It may be an hour more because you got to go a little further, but you go to sleep when you get on the plane as best you can, and then in theory you wake up and somehow you've lost half a day or whatever, but it's not as bad as they say.
Okay.
So as long as you're in business class or above, you never want to be in a coach going across to China or Japan.
Gotcha. So now we get to this point in your career, and before long, Gateway comes along. Tell me about how that came to be? Did the itch come back where you needed a little more Neosporin to put on that thing?
Well, I love the promoter side, and I was a consultant who was titled as a team president of a really challenging Busch Series team. We were just kind of rolling along the last 6 months of the organization at that time till they could file bankruptcy and go on out. So they had me as the consultant to do that. And here's how bad it was. We get to Indy for the little Indy race there at Raceway Park. And I get my crew member guy comes over and he goes, "Goodyear won't give us tires."
Oh, no.
The
Don't
bills,
tell me the check bounced.
Not only, there was no check. They hadn't been paying.
Oh.
So the Goodyear guy says, either you're going to give a credit card and make this good now, or you're not getting tires to race. Well, I had been working at Ogilvy, so my card at the time still had an Ogilvy size credit limit on it. Oh. So I'm on the line with the owners going, I'm going to do this risk, and you are going to cut me this check.
Yeah.
And they did. There was no problem with that. It was an internal problem with their accounting, and they say that, but it really was.
They were on the way out.
They were on the way out, and the accounting department was like, "Why do we have to pay these checks fast? There's no reason to." Well, so that's why Goodyear was delayed, but they wrote mine right away. I got it back. But I remember putting my credit card down for, I think at the time, $16,000 in Goodyear tires. And I'm like, my name's not even on the car. Why can't? So all that's going on. That's August. And I go to Dover with the team, and I saw Dennis McGlynn from Dover. Dennis was a part of the TNN deal with Frank Wilson at Rockingham and such. So Dennis was mentored by Frank in some ways, and so was I. So we're kind of college of Frank. And we said hello on pit road, and I said, "Hey, anytime you need help, I'd love to get back on the track side of it because I love promoting." So now it's November, and it's a Monday night. And my phone rings, and now I got a phone that at least I can tell who's calling me.
Caller ID.
Caller ID, baby. And we're eating dinner, and I look at the phone, and I see that it's Dennis from Dover. I don't answer it.
Really?
Don't answer it.
Dang. Let
it sit. My wife says, "Who was that?" I said, "It's Dennis from Dover. He wants me to run the St. Louis track. He's offering me a job." Now, I hadn't talked to him.
Yeah.
But I saw that St. Louis had changed, and they didn't have anybody as the VPGM. So I knew that Dennis had remembered our conversation, and Dennis and I, to this day, still friends. So I make sure that she's okay with us going to St. Louis, and I called him the next day and said, "Hey, sorry I missed your call last night. I'm looking forward to hearing what we could do together." And he offered, and off we went to St. Louis, where I had great times and bad times out there, but we produced phenomenal events, including 2009. We were the only track in the sport of NASCAR to equal our ticket sales from the year before. 2009, the economy tanked. St. Louis's economy was actually a percentage point worse than the national average for unemployment.
Your hands are tied twice.
Hands are tied twice, but we equaled our sales from year to year, where Humpy Wheeler at Charlotte didn't, Eddie Gossage at Texas didn't, none of the other tracks. They were down 10, 15 to 30% that year. Ours was equal. And people say, "How did you do that?" That also catapults me to today. Grassroots racing. We took it upon ourselves to really bond with the Midwest grassroots people and the tracks there. We had a plan and a strategy that was played out perfectly. I went to every grassroots track I could go to, places where they literally said, why is the GM of a NASCAR track here? And I would sit there and talk with them and talk racing and talk grassroots, and then they got to know. And it became, hey, we're going to Lenny's race to see what he's asking us to do. He came all the way out here to Flora, Illinois, to a track next to a cornfield. We need to go see Lenny. Yep. And see what it's all about one time. And that's how I would kind of position it. I came to you once, please come to me just once. And I was on radio out there every day. Our radio deals with the stations. We cut in that I would be on radio with a station once a week. So every other day I was on somebody. And I would not only promote, hey, great to be on the Flora radio station, and yes, we want you to come to Gateway, but last week old Spanky Sparkplug got third out there, and I got to talk to Spanky while I was there a few weeks back, and what a great character, and, build that connection between grassroots and here. And Chris Economaki actually wrote about what we did in Speed Sport, and what we did there was I got Tammy Gundaker from Tri-City to be our honorary flag person.
Oh.
A dirt track person at a paved stock car track then was like unbelievable taboo almost.
Yeah, it's like you might as well have had an alien up there doing it.
But they didn't see it that way. And in fact, that night, Schrader's track, I-55, ran that night and ran their kids' race night. I sponsored a bike that night out of my own pocket because they were so good to us. And even though they were racing technically against us, they let us promote. And few of their people did come. And it was just a friendship that's to this day. Schrader and Marler and all of them. So it was how we genuinely talked to the grassroots and paid them honor and homage and promoted them, that they remembered it and came to us even in the tough times.
Yeah.
And that was the big success. Long story short, Dover likes their general managers to stay in the office. And they made that really clear after that summer that I would need to change my style if I wanted to be at the pleasure of working there.
And that's going against who you were. You were being who you were.
Which, and truly, I think they thought that I was going to, not honor that or try to combat that. I said, you're exactly right. I said, that's your policy, and I'm not going to fight it. But it is not mine, so I'm not staying. So we parted as friends, even though it was tense for a couple of minutes until they realized that I meant it, that I appreciated their side of it, but I could only do it this way. I didn't know how to sit behind a desk and not participate with the people that loved it as much as I did.
Yeah.
So that's how we did out there. Some great stuff. Ken Schrader, Kenny Wallace, Kevin Gundaker, Tammy, Ray Marler, so many people out there that I love to this day helped make that success. I just happened to be the guy that, kind of ran around and, helped everybody get to know everybody and tried to make it fun in any way we could. And without those people and many more, we wouldn't have had any of that.
So what I've kind of gathered just from listening, as we tie it all back together, whether you were announcing, promoting, working at RCR, being a general manager of a racetrack, a VP, all that stuff, while racing and the competition was kind of like the caveat, it all tied back into the people and taking care of the people. And it sounds like no matter what side of the industry you were on, you had that grasp from a pretty early time, and you still have it now where your PRNs at the track show is about the people. And now you get to tell those stories on you do 2 shows a week. You do a Southeast and a Midwest version, and it's pretty cool you got a handle on that early. I'm sure some people don't get a handle on it until their 40s and 50s, and it's like, man, they gave away so much time not having the perspective that way?
Well, I think it's the mentors that, woke me up to a lot of that. Pat Patterson, Bill Hennessy, Wayne Loudermilk, in those early days of the 90s, making me understand that this guy and this thing might change over the next few years, but that person, he's going to be in this industry. You're going to grow with him. You need to do the honest, right things, even though you may not be wearing the same color uniform, because you could be wearing it next year, and do things that are genuine, that will do more for you in your career than they will today. Don't worry about today, worry about the long term of how you and the sport will be seen together through your career. And you're right. And about my PRNs at the track, I tell folks that it's a people show. It's a people show about the people of racing. It's not a racing show.
Yeah.
I want to know about you and how you felt and about what got you here, way more than about your chassis and your spring setup and how much your engine did this or that. It's what was in that helmet, in that heart, in that crew, in that moment for you and the people around you that made it so special. The mechanical side, I understand and I honor, but it's really that crossover, that bike racer, that drag racer, they can all understand the dirt racer or whoever telling me the story about that moment. And it's a lot of fun.
So now going forward, as you're on the PA systems for the Charlotte events, your radio show, your radio shows, I should say, per week, what's your outlook going forward for what you have left?
I really like the position that we're in, providing this, part of the sport. We try to be an advocate for where the people we interact with. And as long as I can keep doing that and finding a role to use the experience and the mentoring that I was given for the right things, that's what I like doing the most. If somebody needs me to consult with them on how to market a racetrack or this or that, that's great. But I want to be able to have the flexibility to watch my 15-year-old son try to be an announcer in this, be with my wife, and enjoy the people of racing.
That's what it all comes down to.
It is for me.
Before I let you go, any cool Earnhardt stories? Because it seems like that seems to be everything that's on Dale Jr. Download. Everybody has an Earnhardt story. You actually worked there. Did you have any moments on the bass boat or being at a shop? Or did he kind of keep to himself a little bit?
Well, I was a Richard Childress guy.
Okay.
Dale and Richard were great friends. Dale was the driver of the car we made that he drove. So there was a little bit different than, it wasn't as close to Dale, but Dale was so awesome. I learned from Dale about how, he wanted to present his brand and the level of doing the souvenirs in the mid or the late 90s. Every 3-car souvenir that came through Richard Childress Racing had to have my eyes look at it for approval and things like that. And that was a big trust to defend that brand and to look after it. But Earnhardt had a great way when I would stand at the back of the truck and talk to sponsors and media and things like that. As he was leaving the truck to go to the car for whatever, or just leaving to go to the media center or somewhere else, I would know Dale was good with me if he came by and literally tried to rip my sides out with a pinch. I could be talking on camera, and this rascal would come up behind me and just whip into my sides with a big old pinch and keep going. So
and you're not a big guy. You don't have much meat to pinch. You're pretty skinny.
No, and he just get a big old twist on it and then keep going and go, Batycki.
Is that how you say
yeah, kind of kind of my bad impersonation of Senior and such. But if he went by me and didn't do something with me, I had to pause and make sure, is he mad at me? Oh, no, he was distracted. He'll get you next time.
Yeah.
Then I was okay. Yeah, but if he was cranky with me for any reason, I certainly didn't want it because, he was just too cool. He was everything that has been said about him and so much more kind, intense, smart, vision, everything. And my last one is about Peter Max. This is my last story about Dale. So we're all see the drawings and think, man, okay, Peter Max car, I don't know about, is Dale ever going to, how are we going to tell Dale he's going to have to drive this thing?
It's the yellow car.
It's all colors in the rainbow car, yes. So, the helicopter comes in, flies in to welcome, and we've got Peter Max there to present his artwork to Dale to show him this car and everything. And we're thinking, oh my God, this is going to be terrible. He's going to walk in and say that.
Nobody's optimistic. No. Everybody's like, this is going horrible. We're going to go bad.
We're waiting for, having to say, Mr. Max, we appreciate you coming to see us. Thank you. It was great to meet you. And we're sorry Dale won't drive your car. Well, Dale walks in the boardroom and makes a beeline for Max. And hey, Peter, Teresa and I love your work. We've got a couple of pieces of our own. Thank you, man. Looking forward to being in your car. We're all like, stop it!
Like, where'd this come from?
Yeah, we did not realize he knew Peter's work and appreciated it, and that this was going to be that cool.
Oh, wow.
It just blew us away.
I wouldn't have thought he liked it either, because that thing is so darn different.
So different.
I guess that would be the better word. I don't want to say anything bad about it. It was just so... it was one thing when he drove the orange Wheaties car or the silver car or whatever, but that one I was just like, and I wasn't even an Earnhardt fan. And I was like, well, that's interesting.
Well, he was so much
That is amazing
more,
he bought into it.
Well, he was so much more cosmopolitan. He understood the big picture of the world. He had great mentors and had great people that, didn't take the rough edges off him, which we loved that fight in him that it was. But he learned from, how to really capture the world. And that was some of the greatest stuff, to be able to see him, surprise us with knowledge and foresight like nobody else. This is awesome.
Only Dale.
Only Dale.
Oh, man. I really appreciate it. I've had a ton of fun just sitting here listening. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everything you've done for me just as a mentor, and I know I can always call you if I have a question, but just really appreciate it, brother. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure, and let's head on over to the refreshment stand. I heard there's half price.
Yeah, you don't like calling them concessions.
No, I don't.
That's another thing I was waiting on.
But thank you for having us on, and just ask folks to follow PRNs at the track on Twitter, and maybe check out our shows at goprn.com. But thank you very much.